always thought the courtroom would be the end of our story. Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day. But it was really just the beginning. My name is Sandra Diaz. And 2 years ago, I was a mother on the verge of losing everything. Not just my son, but the life I had fought to rebuild after my divorce. My ex-husband Victor had made it his personal mission to destroy me, piece by piece, lie by lie. And somehow, he was winning. Victor wasn't just any man. He was polished, wealthy. He knew how to command a room. Every word that came out of his mouth sounded like truth, except it wasn't. And the worst part, everyone believed him, even the judge. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning, back when I still thought I had a chance at being believed. Victor and I had been divorced for 3 years when the custody battle started. Our son, Lucas, was 6, gentle, bright, and living with a congenital heart defect that had made him a frequent flyer at the pediatric ward. I'd spent countless nights in hospitals, sleeping in chairs beside his bed, learning the names of his medications and how to read his monitors like a nurse. I quit my job to care for him. That was never a question. Victor, on the other hand, kept his distance. He was busy, always flying, always in meetings. He sent money, sure, but presents, care, that was mine to give. And for a while that was enough. Until I got a letter from his lawyer. Mr. Diaz is concerned about the medical care of the minor child, Lucas Diaz. It read. He believes Ms. Sandra Diaz may be misrepresenting Lucas's condition and overstepping her qualifications, possibly endangering the child's health. We request an emergency hearing. My hands trembled. He was accusing me of harming our son. I called my attorney Marlene in tears. She asked for every piece of documentation I had. Hospitals, prescriptions, specialists, everything. If he's going this route, he'll use any weakness against you. But here's the thing, I had the documents. I had the doctor's reports. I had the specialists who knew me by name. What I didn't have was power, or a last name that turned heads. Victor, as always, did. The first day of court was like a bad dream. Victor showed up in a navy suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He smiled at everyone, even the judge. He brought a high-profile attorney, a woman named Carla Freeman, who carried herself like a woman used to winning. I showed up with a manila folder and bags under my eyes from a week of no sleep. Victor's argument, that I was over-medicalizing our son, that I had Munchausen by proxy, a rare disorder where a parent makes their child sick for attention. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He claimed I exaggerated Lucas's condition, that I refused treatment options, that I rejected specialists he recommended, that I refused to let Lucas be vaccinated, which was a flat-out lie. Then he dropped the real bomb. A witness, an independent medical consultant, who had allegedly reviewed Lucas's records and claimed there was evidence of unnecessary emergency visits. That's impossible, I whispered to Marlene. Every visit was necessary. Lucas has a real heart condition. But the court wasn't interested in my protests. They were interested in documentation, expert testimony, evidence, and Victor had all three, or so it seemed. Over the next few weeks, the case unfolded like a slow-motion car crash. Victor painted himself as the rational one, the calm, logical parent who just wanted his son to be healthy. I was the emotional one, the woman who cried too easily, the mother who maybe loved too much, but in the wrong ways. He used moments against me. The night I screamed at a nurse who wouldn't let me stay past visiting hours. The time I insisted Lucas's fainting spell be taken seriously, even when his vitals had normalized. All of it was twisted, used to show a pattern of emotional instability. And Victor, he had testimonials from 2 private doctors I had never met, who claimed Lucas's condition was not as severe as reported, and that he could have been living a more normal, active lifestyle. I felt myself slipping through the cracks. The harder I fought, the more hysterical I looked. And in court, image was everything. Lucas was placed with Victor temporarily. pending further evaluation. I sobbed in the hallway as my son cried in a stranger's car, the nanny Victor hired overnight. I had one more hearing left. If I didn't find something indisputable, I would lose full custody. 3 days before the final hearing, I got a call from a blocked number. I almost didn't pick up, but something in me told me to. Mrs. Diaz. Yes. Who's this? My name is Elise. I was a cardiac nurse at Ridgeway Children's Hospital. I took care of your son 2 years ago. I know what your ex-husband is saying about you in court. My breath caught. He's lying, she continued. And I have proof. I sat down. What kind of proof? I kept copies of notes from Lucas's stay. I documented everything, including the times Mr. Diaz refused consent for procedures or failed to show up for consults. I even logged a note when he told a surgeon not to inform you about a treatment option because he thought you'd just get emotional. I couldn't speak. My heart pounded so hard I thought I'd faint. I'm not supposed to keep files, she whispered. But I did, because something didn't feel right about him. And I think you'll need them. Elise drove across the state that same night. When she arrived, she handed me a worn folder filled with photocopies. Nurses' notes, doctor consultations, time-stamped forms, signatures missing Victor's, notes in margins. Mother insisted on echocardiogram despite father declining. Father refused follow-up on new symptoms. Mother reported fainting spells not documented in chart. I cried reading them. These were not the actions of an unstable woman. They were the actions of a mother fighting for her son's life. Elise also had one more thing, a recorded voice memo. It wasn't official, but it was real. I recorded him once, she said. He was yelling in the hallway at a nurse. Said you were a sucker for drama, and that if it were up to him, Lucas wouldn't have had half those tests done because they just make him look sick on paper. I handed everything to Marlene the next morning. This changes everything, she said. But it had to be handled delicately, because if Victor got wind of this file, he'd find a way to bury it. We didn't include Elisa's file in our official discovery documents. Not yet. Marlene had a plan. We'll let Victor's team present their final arguments, and then we'll enter this as a rebuttal exhibit. It's risky, but if we catch them mid-lie, the impact will be 10 times stronger. He nodded. I had no other choice. The night before court, I stayed awake reading the nurse's notes again and again, reminding myself I wasn't crazy. I wasn't unstable. I was a mother, a real one. And Victor, he was about to be unmasked. I walked into the courtroom wearing a simple navy dress and holding nothing but my notepad. I didn't bring Elisa's file with me. Marlene had it tucked in her briefcase, locked and sealed. No one saw it coming. Victor was radiant, confident. He kissed his lawyer on the cheek, too familiar for a professional gesture, and gave a rehearsed smile to the judge. Felt like theater. 'Cause it was. Your Honor, Carla Freeman began. This case is not about love. It's about responsibility. And my client has demonstrated a pattern of rational, evidence-based parenting. Ms. Diaz, however, has shown obsessive tendencies that border on psychological disorder. She laid it on thick. They even brought in a private psychiatrist. One Victor paid to evaluate my parenting pattern based on second-hand observations and court transcripts. He diagnosed me with clinical overprotectiveness, whatever that meant. They claimed I interfered with medical decisions, exaggerated symptoms, rejected Victor's attempts to create a more normalized home environment. He's 6. I muttered under my breath. What normal environment? Then it was our turn. Marlene stood calmly and said, Your Honor, with the court's permission, we would like to introduce a rebuttal file containing first-hand documentation of Mr. Diaz's involvement, or lack thereof, in Lucas Diaz's medical care. The judge raised an eyebrow. This is new. Yes, Your Honor. It was brought to our attention only within the past 48 hours by a nurse who was directly involved in Lucas's treatment. We ask that it be admitted under Section 7 of the Evidentiary Integrity Clause due to its urgent relevance and authenticity. Carla objected. Course she did. But the judge allowed it. Then, Marlene opened the folder. Page by page, Marlene read aloud from the nurse's notes. Father failed to show for surgical consult, 11:14 a.m. Mother requested second opinion after father declined cardiac MRI. Father stated, quote, tests only make him look sick on paper. Doctor advised echocardiogram. Mother agreed. Father unreachable by phone. Victor shifted in his seat. Marlene continued. Then she played the voice memo. The courtroom fell silent as Victor's voice echoed across the chambers. She eats up every beep on that heart monitor like it's applause. You don't get it. If I let her keep this up, he'll end up with a scarlet letter on every insurance form for the rest of his life. I just want a normal kid. Not a weak one. Even from the clerk. The judge held up his hand. Play that again. She did. Victor went pale. Carla Freeman tried to recover. This is inadmissible. It was not court-sanctioned. The judge cut her off. You claimed Ms. Diaz created imaginary medical crises. You backed that claim with doctors who had never treated the child. This nurse did. And this recording aligns with her notes. I find it highly relevant. He turned to Victor. Did you make this statement? Victor straightened in his seat. That could be taken out of context. The judge raised his hand again. I asked a yes or no question. Victor hesitated. Yes. And did you knowingly decline necessary procedures without informing the mother? Victor opened his mouth, closed it, then looked at his attorney. I didn't think they were necessary. I didn't want him raised to be scared of life. You don't get to make that decision alone, the judge said coldly. Not when a child's health is at stake. The courtroom didn't erupt, it cracked. The judge called for a recess. I could hear Carla whispering furiously at Victor, her hand on his arm like she wanted to pull him out of the building before it caved in. Marlene turned to me. We're not done. But we just broke their spine. When we returned to the courtroom, the judge addressed both parties. In light of new evidence and the troubling pattern of parental manipulation, I am issuing a temporary custody reversal. Lucas Diaz will return to the primary custody of his mother effective immediately. A psychological evaluation of Mr. Diaz's behavior regarding medical neglect and coercive control will follow. I heard Victor curse under his breath. I didn't look at him. I was too busy trying to breathe through the wave of emotion crashing through my chest. After the hearing, Victor followed me into the corridor. You think this changes anything, he hissed. That kid needs structure. He'll see through you eventually. I turned to him calmly. No, Victor. What he'll see is the truth. Maybe not today, but someday. He scoffed and walked away, jaw tight. The first crack in the man who'd once felt untouchable. Marlene joined me and whispered, "This isn't over. He'll fight back. But now we're on offense." Lucas came home that night. He ran into my arms like nothing had happened. He didn't ask questions. He didn't know about the war being fought in his name. He just said, "Can we make waffles?" And that's what we did. For the first time in weeks, I slept with peace. But not with complacency. Because I knew Victor would strike again. He always did. But this time I had more than hope. I had evidence. And I had allies. Victor didn't wait long. Less than 2 weeks after Lucas returned to me, I received a new summons. Victor had filed a motion for defamation and emergency custody review. He claimed the audio recording had been manipulated, and that I conspired with a disgruntled nurse to fabricate false documentation. He had also filed a complaint with the state medical board against Elise. The cruelty of it was surgical. He wanted to discredit the woman who had risked everything to tell the truth. And he wanted to bury me again in legal mud, where he always had the advantage. Marlene looked at me calmly. He's panicking. That's when narcissists are most dangerous. But he just opened a door we've been waiting for. Victor's team expected us to fold under pressure. But Marlene filed a countermotion. Full custody, plus a petition for supervised visitation pending a psychiatric evaluation. And then came discovery. We subpoenaed emails, texts, logs. Elise agreed to testify, even after Victor's legal threats. But it wasn't Elise who gave us the breakthrough. It was Victor's own digital trail. One of his private consultants had billed him for editing metadata on digital files. Another invoice referred to a scripted statement for the psychiatrist who testified on his behalf. And buried in a forgotten email chain was a message from Victor's assistant, dated months before the custody battle even began. All set for the medical campaign. If we can undermine her as a hysterical mother, the rest will be easy. The phrase medical campaign hit me like a punch to the chest. He planned this. All of it. It was cold and raining the morning of the final custody hearing. A steady drizzle that seemed to strip every tree bare, just like I had been stripped again and again in that courtroom. But not today. Elise arrived early, calm and focused. Lucas stayed with my sister. And Marlene had everything organized into 3 neat files. Timeline. Testimony. Truth. Victor looked less polished this time. His suit was wrinkled. His hair was slightly overgrown. And for once, he didn't look at me when I walked in. The hearing began with his lawyer demanding the recording be thrown out. But the judge shut it down quickly. The audio was deemed admissible. Move on. Then Victor took the stand. He tried charm again. Deflection. Downplaying. But when Marlene brought out the invoices, the emails, the assistant's message, everything changed. The judge's tone shifted. Mr. Diaz, did you orchestrate a false medical narrative for the purpose of discrediting the child's mother and altering custody arrangements? Victor didn't answer. The judge pressed again. And then came the words I never thought I'd hear. Mr. Diaz, if you do not answer truthfully, you will be held in contempt and subject to perjury charges. Victor cracked. He admitted to hiring consultants to reassess the narrative, as he called it. He admitted to pressuring the psychiatrist to issue a diagnosis he had already crafted. He admitted he never intended to harm Lucas, but believed control was necessary to avoid being cut out. It was all about him, every word, and for the first time everyone in that courtroom saw it. The judge ruled the same day. Full physical and legal custody granted to me. Supervised visitation rights for Victor, to be re-evaluated in 1 year. A formal recommendation submitted to the Bar Association regarding the conduct of his legal team. And a referral to the state prosecutor for further investigation into perjury and falsification of medical evidence. Victor didn't look at me as he left. He looked through me, like I had become invisible. And I didn't care. 'Cause I had won. Not for revenge, but for truth. For Lucas. And for myself. Lucas is 7 now. He's doing well, stronger, louder, full of light. He still needs checkups. And he still has his scar from the surgery Victor once tried to block. But it doesn't define him. He asked me once, "Did Dad not want me to get better?" And I answered honestly, "No, sweetheart." He just didn't understand how important it was to have people who fight for you. He nodded. And then he said something I'll never forget. "I'm glad I got you." Elise still works as a nurse. After everything settled, she was cleared of all wrongdoing. In fact, she was quietly awarded by the hospital for professional courage and patient advocacy. She sent me a card last Christmas. Inside it said, "One file doesn't change the world. But sometimes it changes one world. And that's enough." And she was right. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story and tell us where you're watching from.